Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session, which is really focused on corporate treasury. I'm delighted this afternoon to have with me three treasury experts from around the region. We have Xuelin Chen, who at the moment is in Shanghai. We have Francis Ho in Hong Kong, and we have Benny Ko in Singapore. I'm delighted that they were able to join me today. I'm Caroline Stockmann. I'm Chief Executive of the Association of Corporate Treasurers. As we come to the end of 2021, we're delighted to be hosted here by GTR, our good friends and partners in crime, to talk about what's been happening, what the trends are, and what is coming up in the corporate treasury world. And looking particularly across the region and finding out what the differences are, especially in those three geographies that we've just mentioned, where our three panelists are seated. So without further ado, I will just mention a little bit of housekeeping. Really, it's to say, do use the Q&A function. I'm sure our panelists would love to answer some of your questions, as well as some of mine that I've got lined up this morning. So do use that function. I'll be keeping an eye on it, and I'll take some questions perhaps as we're going along, or there's a little part of the time allocated at the end for questions particularly. So do get those lined up, and I'll keep an eye on them as we're going through. But first of all, before we go into my questions, we'll have some introductions. I'd like to hear just a little bit from the panel. You've got their biographies, you know who they are, so I'm not going to repeat that in a formal way, but I'd like them just to say a couple of words about themselves, and also something a little bit personal, a fact that you may not know about them when you read their biographies, because I always find with these virtual sessions that it's helpful for people to get that human element and feel a little bit closer to so I'm going to start now in alphabetical order, if I may, starting with Benny. If you could give a brief introduction, that would be great.
Awesome. Right. Hi. Thanks, Caroline. My name is Benny. I'm a partner with Deloitte. I look after the Asia Pacific practice for Deloitte Treasury. I'm based in Singapore. So a little fun fact. Well, COVID shut down working from home. I actually became a certified barista. So over the last couple of months, I have the whole cafe gig in my own kitchen, right? So I have an espresso machine, a grinder. I've tasted different coffee. So if you're in Singapore, feel free to reach out. You can come to my place for coffee, right? And wine too. So I love collecting wine as well. So these are my two vices to kind of keep me sane during the COVID.
Excellent. Well, I know where I will be heading next time I set foot in Singapore. Thank you, Benny. If we move over now to Francis, if you could do the same as a little introduction, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Francis Ho, based in Hong Kong. I'm the group treasurer of CLP Group. CLP focuses on the power industry and only on power industry. So with that, we have pretty long-term business vision. And we are committed to do this in a good way, because it's the only sector that we would invest. And Hong Kong is a place that perhaps attracts a lot of attention, and perhaps a little bit more attention in the recent years. Like you all, the people of Hong Kong, we are keeping our patience and discipline in the fight against the COVID-19 and the various variant virus. And we are also keeping our efforts. We have very tough and disciplined restrictions in the city, and wish you all stay well and safe throughout the period when the world continues to prevail and perhaps transmute to a better form and further open up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis. Moving over to Xuelin, perhaps you could also give an introduction and a little fact about yourself.
Sure, Caroline. Hi, everyone. My name is Xuelin. I'm based in Shanghai. I'm the group treasurer for Trip.com, the largest online travel agency in Asia. I came back to Shanghai to work for Trip in 2019 after 14 years in Europe, and then it was the first time I worked in my own country. I have to say that I did have a reverse culture shock, what they call. when I just came back, because the work culture here in China is very different from the West, compared to Europe, where I was living. You hear about 996 or 007. They're all true. Like, people here work very long hours, and they don't separate, like, they have very little separation between the personal and the work life. So I had to fit into that work culture, which is very interesting sometimes. Yeah.
It must be indeed very interesting. And sometimes when some of our Chinese contacts, partners, and so on, some of the times when I'm reading their mails, I'm thinking, are they really working at this time?
Yeah. At night, in the weekends, people work all the time.
Yeah. I consider myself quite a hard worker, as do others around me, and sometimes I'm quite amazed. I'll stay with you, Xuelin, now to ask you: is there a sense of kind of renewed hope and optimism out there at the moment? Do you think in the across the Treasury profession, or do you think we're still in uncharted waters and there's a bit of wait and see? How would you describe the situation for Treasury in the current environment?
I would say, Caroline, it's much more clearer now, at least at this point of time, compared to last year. If last year, because for the visibility for Treasury really come from the outlook of the business, and also the bigger outlook, the economic environment, government policy, etc. Last year, I think everyone is still learning or figuring out what is the right thing to do for that specific country. And right now, I think for us, now we are doing our budget for 2022, and our business had a very clear business strategy, and we can see that in terms of financial market, the inflation is back everywhere, almost in all countries. So I think in terms of Treasury, it's much more clear. Now my priority is very simple. It's just to support wherever the business has growth. We will definitely to allocate the necessary financial resource, even the human resource, to support those growth points for the company. So I would say, it's much more a certainty now. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Xuelin. Maybe moving over to Francis next. How would you describe it in Hong Kong? Renewed hope, optimism, or still a lot of uncertainty?
Well, I would say that the situation is not gloomy. We have seen economic activities coming back in different magnitude across the business sectors and also different regions in Asia Pacific. We do have investments in countries around Hong Kong, apart from mainland China, like Australia, India, and some of the Southeast Asia regions. I think the path to full discovery is certainly not even, but the effectiveness of medical and perhaps the economic policy on post-pandemic year can make a difference. And we continue to see perhaps a rebound of economic activities in the regional countries at least, and the figures are pretty promising. I would say that it's perhaps, from my own perspective, better to remain a bit cautious when we emerge from one of the more challenging periods of our time, and perhaps also exercise the right vigilance to guard against any contingencies or adversities of the situation. But having said that, I believe the situation perhaps will continue to improve, and we should have gone over the worst period. Perhaps going forward, there is also one uncertainty. What we need to watch out is perhaps whether there is a new norm after the pandemic period, which can be beyond our imagination to a certain extent. This could be more exciting than the perhaps IT technology evolution. In somehow, this time perhaps we would need to take the form of changing interpersonal relationship, the reimagination of the work and the work life, and also displacement of some of the established settings and values that might have a deep impact to how we continue to survive, to excel in the future years.
Absolutely, it's very, very interesting times, and I liked your words around vigilance, words of a true treasurer, I think. Moving on to Benny now, what are your reflections from a Singapore standpoint?
Oh, I think it's definitely one of our optimism. A couple of things, right? I think people are getting used to the fact that working from home, remote collaboration could be the new norm, right? So as a consequence of that, I mean, we even implement a treasury management system remotely. We do UAT through different Zoom session. People just get on with it, right? I mean, like what Xuelin said, the last year, the first couple of months was a little bit confusing on how people will work from home and do, and partly in the office and so on and so forth. But after some time, people adapt. So we implemented a system for client remotely through Zoom, UAT, and went live, right? All without seeing each other. So I thought that was quite a phenomenon, right? And so that's Singapore. The treasury market is also pretty hot because I think CFOs are actually recognizing the technical expertise. That's actually more important, right? I mean, COVID has caught into mind, right? Capital. Do I have enough money, enough cash, enough capital? And the technical expertise that's needed right now to bring the treasury to a new chapter, right? So the job market for treasury folks across all levels, from senior to most junior, is actually pretty hot in where I'm sitting right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm sensing that it is one of hope and definitely optimism.
Really, really interesting. Thank you very much. So just following on from that, staying with you, Benny, what are the hottest topics for treasurers at the moment? Is it all about technology or even cybercrime on the other hand? Is it about LIBOR transition, regulation, or is it more about cultural matters and the ways of working for the future?
I suppose it's a combination of all, right? And technology is an enabler. Working from home for some companies, I think it became quite obvious that they are technology laggards, right? For some companies, right? If you have to do Excel spreadsheet, how do you collaborate when people are working from home, right? If I'm still cutting checks, it can become a little bit more troublesome. So I think that there is a level up, right? Level up of what people think now on technology. It used to be an aversion, right? Technology is expensive. If I implement a system, it's going to be costly. It's going to be time consuming. But right now with Zoom, we are doing a conference in Zoom, right? That sort of technology, right? And the ability to now use cloud-based treasury solution is making it so easy for people to upgrade. So I think there's a renewed sense of catching up, right, on the technology side. Mm-hmm. Capital is another one, right? I mean, Xuelin talks about inflation. Right now, that's the second hot topic, right? If global rates are to go up, then how should I refinance? How should I look at my balance sheet, right? Should I go out now to borrow 10 years bond, 5 years, right? How do I deal with that? So I think that's a hot topic, if not soon to be a very hot topic right now, fundraising. And to your point, Caroline, culture, right? The ability now for staff to work from home doesn't mean that when the new norm, as Francis said, comes, will be that 3 days in the office, 2 days from home. And I think culturally that's becoming very acceptable, which I thought that's a new development, right? In terms of how we work and how we collaborate. So it is an exciting future. I'm optimist, right? So I'm seeing all that. These are the hot topic right now. And talent, obviously, I mentioned earlier, right? People are talking about now, how do I get treasury talent onto my companies?
Yeah, absolutely. And inflation is a fascinating one, isn't it? Because a lot of our treasurers around the world have not worked in an inflationary environment. So it's going to be
a few of us are dating ourselves now, right? So
it's something quite new, isn't it? I'll just pop back to a bit of variety, back to Francis, and before coming back to Xuelin, just say, Francis, what's your view briefly on the hot topics?
Well, what Benny has discussed and shared, obviously they are very valid subjects for treasurers today. But however, I'm a little bit pragmatic, and perhaps I would say that on behalf of the company and my team, what we have been spending most of the time around this season to conclude. Perhaps two of them stand out. The first is LIBOR transition, or people call it IBOR transition. That's because the announcement of the schedule by the authorities that the majority of LIBOR panels will ease at the end of this year has reminded us all to speed up the effort to mitigate those risks, and also to ensure an orderly transition by the end of the year, as well as coming up of a coherent rundown of the legacy contracts. These would take time. These would also take continued effort to collaborate with multiple parties, both internal and external parties, including the auditor and legal counsels. From the corporate treasurer perspective, we have kept an open and constructive LIBOR transmission dialogue with the key stakeholders, and continue to monitor one area which is also important. That's the development with regard to other IBOR transitions that is relevant to the business units. That particularly would apply to a company like us that we have operations outside the home country. That we need to follow, to monitor, and to share, and further cooperate with our colleagues to see the right outcome. Secondly, there's also a critical, I think this is also a critical moment for the treasurers to recognize that sustainability and ESG are well subjects when we perform our duties. Such acknowledgement will not only stimulate how we can meet business plan along with the business initiatives. For example, we have the Climate Vision 2050 for the group in Hong Kong. So that will enable us, keeping this reminder, to deliver our overall business goals in a more meaningful and responsible way. I expect Asia would have ample room to grow faster on sustainability and ESG. Especially, I recall a report that corporates in Asia have increasing awareness and willingness to take action on sustainability, but some of us are still not yet integrating ESG well into the business model. And many of the companies lack the expertise to address the issue. There's also some figures saying that projections of socially responsible investments to total managed assets in Asia, excluding Japan, is still under 1%. This compared with over half in Europe. So when we gather the momentum of sustainability in the region, we shall be able to further promote a consensus that ESG is a part of good corporate governance, that the ESG framework can be a very useful perspective for companies to manage the risk and also tackle challenges while we receive the opportunities.
Absolutely, really, really important hot topics there. Yesterday, I was speaking with the FTSE 20 corporate treasurers, and we were talking about the whole ESG area and just how much treasurers are getting involved in that and becoming quite a focal point. And one of our treasurers, even in a large organisation, not FTSE 20, she's actually responsible for sustainability as well as Treasury, which is really interesting development. If I look back 10 years, that was not the case. LIBOR as well, really, really important. Some people still haven't done their inventarization, still not sure what LIBOR conditions are lurking maybe in their late payment terms or whatever. So if you're wanting in the audience to catch up on any of that, do go onto our website. There's lots of materials that will update you as to where we are at the moment on IBOR transition and what you really need to do, just in case there's a lot of, it's been a long time actually, that transition, and not over yet, but in terms of GBP LIBOR, this year end is, no new LIBOR contracts. And the US, it's somewhat later, June 23. But you need to understand and look at your currencies, look at what is written into your various contracts before you get into a little bit of a difficulty potentially. But thanks very much for that, Francis. Moving on now to Xuelin. What would you say the hot topics that you perceive for the Treasury community at the moment?
Yeah, Caroline, for us, I echo on the ESG topic. We think the past, at least from a Chinese company perspective, I think we come quite late on this topic, especially the sustainability, the green topic. I think as a group organization that is encouraging people to travel, we need to look at the way that how we can minimize or offset our carbon impact ourselves. So at Treasury, in the past, for us, in my mind, even me, I think we need to really learn a little bit much more on this. In the past, I thought, it's just maybe just a PR topic, right? Like only marketing and PR top people are working on this. But now more and more our investors, equity investors, and also the banks, they're asking what are the company's action, like concrete action, what you are doing to offset or to minimize your carbon impact. So now we're working very closely with banks on this topic. Last week, actually, Trip did our very first green deposit with a Singaporean bank, and I think this is our very first step at Treasury to contribute a little bit more on this topic. Another hot topic for me is definitely technology. I think this is quite amazing. I found for years, we only hear about TMS, and some incremental improvement or upgrade. But now suddenly, there are so many new concepts, we hear RPAs, blockchain, AI, and digitalization, API. I think at the very beginning, it can be quite overwhelming. What do all those technology mean to my day-to-day Treasury operation, right? Of course, I think my role right now is really to understand what are the underlying technologies and whether they can be integrated into my day-to-day Treasury process, and whether they are necessary and essential for the future of my department. And instead of just following blindly, just follow the trend, right? I think one thing that we identified that could work for us is we're right now doing a little RPA test, a little robot. The reason we like it because it's very lightweight. They're not going to fundamentally change my current process. However, they can help my team to free up quite a bit of time, manual work, in order to focus on something else. One of the robots is they will just log on all the e-bankings, one after the other, every 5 minutes, and retrieve a bank account balance and send the email to all my team. So even just a small thing like that can save, I don't know, make 30 to 40 minutes of each of them. I think those is quite fascinating.
Absolutely, and that, as you said, that speed of change and transition, and we're seeing treasurers engaging more and more. A few years back, it was technology. Well, we'll just wait and see and have a look. And people are now doing stuff, aren't they? Which is really, really fascinating. And just to mention, next week, the ACT is running our virtual event, the Festival of Treasury Transformation. So it's for Asia, it's a slightly awkward time zone, but everything's recorded. So if you sign on for that, anyone who's interested, you can always look at things on demand afterwards. But that's focusing very much on technology and transformation because it is so big. There's so many new players out there. And going back to your ESG point as well, that pressure coming from banks, investors, etc., and the credit rating agencies. We were just last week in a round table with Fitch ratings, and the more this comes into the spotlight, the more pressure there is on companies, the more will be done. Yeah, for us, we have I didn't know that we had a ESG rating, and it's medium risk. And I was why we're medium risk? I need to understand, right? We don't like risk at the Treasury. Yes, absolutely. Now, moving slightly, I see some questions coming in, so don't worry, we'll get to those questions shortly. But I'd just like to stay with Xuelin to ask you, are you seeing a difference in terms of the demographics of your team? Are younger treasurers expecting something different from the career that you embarked on?
Yeah, I think I have a very young team. Like we're 14, including me, we're 15, and so I have a team of 14 female treasurer or young treasuries, and the average age is 29 without me, and it's about 30 with me. So it's very. So they're very young, and of course we have like some of them millennials, and some of them are Generation Z. You know, the ones that we just recruited from university. So the work ethic for them, for this generation, is quite different. Like they are very conscious about their own needs, and they they definitely seek much more like work-life balance than what like my generation do, and they have like much broader interest. So for me, for us, the way is to manage a new team like that is really to understand what their individual needs, and also they are much more, they embrace technology much easier than we do. So I thought that fits into the digitalization whole treasury transformation topic perfectly, because they accept a new concept much easier than my generation. So yeah.
Thanks, Xuelin. Francis, are you seeing similar in your team?
Well, we do have some younger, more dynamic, enthusiastic members joining the team to support the business growth. In general, I think they are very they have high aspiration. They are ambitious. They are also enthusiastic about life and the work. They are more liberal. They are also eager to explore and to meet and interact with the multiple parties. These young talents can certainly help help build teamwork, connect different disciplines and business, particularly when we have a business outside the home country or the host location. Most of them also, I would say, they exhibit the good quality that they can learn. They can apply technology in a faster way. They also can strictly apply the more innovative way of doing business. But of course, we are also a more established company. We have some critical governance or policies to observe. So that's an interesting point that we need to keep a good balance. But sometimes I would say that the young people, they are more energetic and they can think outside the box. I think that could be a good quality, especially if we are working on projects to integrate different business unit or different processes when we need to optimize or update certain applications or system that might be extremely relevant. And a couple of years ago, we upscaled the group treasury management system. I was glad to see the engagement and very good contribution of some of the young talents in the project, which we see very good complement or supplement of the team, where we have more experienced senior team members with the younger ones.
That diversity is really, really important, isn't it? That diversity in the team that can just achieve greater results, greater innovation, greater growth. All the research shows it. I'll move on to Benny, though, to get your perspective, looking at your clients. Do you notice that demographical difference? What would your comments be?
Oh, absolutely, right. I can speak only for my team, but like Xuelin, I have a team of 15 people. Average age is below 30, and from 5 different countries, right? So it is a high energy team. So I can really appreciate the energy that the younger generation brings. I've been in the market for more than 25 years now. So I'm learning. I'm learning from the young ideas that they brought in, especially the consumption of technology and the ability to adapt so quickly, right, compared to me. I think young people, the younger generation, I think, has a sense of, they want to feel a sense of purpose, right? So that's where the topic of ESG is so close and dear to their hearts. Inclusiveness is another one, and fairness, the concept of fairness, right? So we are sensing a lot, and we try from an employment standpoint to exceed their expectation when it comes to all these expectations. So it is exciting, and I'm actually quite humbled, right, in terms of leading a team so young, that are not it's not just me coaching them, it's actually me learning from them as well. So it's quite fun, I mean, having a young team.
Yeah. And on that point, or a related point, our business of treasury research that we carry out every year, if people aren't familiar, we have interviews with about 200 kind of randomly selected treasurers and CFOs from around the world. And one of the really interesting things that came out this year in the verbatim comments, a lot of people talked about trust. A lot of people said that their bosses trusted them more, and that they trusted their team more through COVID. It was a kind of result of COVID and the working from home and that flexibility. Is that something, Benny, that you have seen over the last 20 months? Has there been a greater trust engendered?
Absolutely, right. So trust is I use the word complex and simple at the same time, right? At the bilateral level, do I trust you? Do I not trust you, right? And then it gets more complex when we talk about, do I trust the organization, right? And when it comes to COVID, do I trust the government with the vaccines, right? So there are different levels of trust. And clearly, as human being, I think trust is important, no matter how we put it, right? I know blockchain is trying to remove this concept of trust by saying that, hey, I can validate without having to trust the other person, right? So the blockchain technology removed the concept of that, right? And but as social beings, we do business with friends, right? We do business with people whom we trust or look after our best interests. And like you say, Caroline, I think COVID just brought about, working from home just brought about this need even more amplified, right? That I actually need to go out to meet people. I need to make sure that to trust my staff are actually working, right, from home. That things are actually going according to plan, to project timeline, and so on and so forth. But so far it has been, right. So that builds on a level of trust, of interdependence, and I think going forward post COVID, the topic of trust is actually even more important.
Absolutely. Xuelin, is that something that you've noticed as well?
Yes, certainly. For us, we didn't work from home because we only worked from home like for 2 weeks last year, and then everyone was back to office. So the work environment in terms of that schedule is normal. However, because we work in the travel industry, and it's one of the most heat industry among all probably. So we did lose talent maybe to Benny, because you try to recruit the good talent from other company. How can you attract talent? So it was very difficult for me to see my managers leaving, right, to another internet company, for example. And so like, of course, I managed to keep some of them. However, it's really to understand whoever left are either very committed or love what they do currently, or they enjoy the work-life balance that they have at the moment. So definitely we're as a smaller team, and we almost have the same amount of work, right, compared to before. Everyone is much more committed, and there is much more trust between us as well. I can feel that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that, Xuelin. And it's interesting because very different from country to country, of course. In your experience when we talk about working from home and that element of it. So thanks for flagging that one up. Francis, any comment before, and then I'll pause and move on to, because we've got quite a few questions lined up, so I'll stop my questions. But Francis, some final comments on that trust element.
Yeah, a short comment. I fully agree with the say that we see more entrustment and more open-minded and support among all others during this time. I think that very important is that COVID-19, this crisis has sent shockwaves to the business and economies, of course, but there's also one very great impact. That's the human one. being that it could and has created more fear and uncertainty with the lockup of cities, and also lockdown of the cities, and also the restriction of travels, and in some cases disconnection of persons with their families, relatives, and so on. And naturally, that would require, from the working perspective, that we need a great culture of trust, transparency, and openness, because stay at home would mean there's no one looking over the shoulders of the team when they perform the function. So they need to come up with very honest, trustworthy way of performing the duty in order. And that also means that the team together shall come up with more effective, agile way of meeting the business purposes. So I think that would further promote the work situation that we shall continue to adapt and adopt a more liberal, trustworthy, supportive norm when we are more back to the office and continue with the business ambitions. And I think that this is a very variable journey that we have gone through, even though it's also a perhaps challenge, and at times would be a painful one.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks very much, everyone, for answering my questions. I'm going to move over to the audience questions and now and stop mine unless we run out of questions. I don't think we will, because there's a lot there. To speed things up, I'll probably ask just one of you each of the questions, but others do chip in if you've got something to add. And the first one that came in, I'm going to take that first, and I'm going to ask Benny this question. Focusing specifically on trade implications for treasurers, supply chain management has long needed to improve its technology capacity, but too many companies have obfuscated on this, with a lot of failed promises over the revolutionizing of supply chains. Is greater foresight needed when it comes to pursuing solutions rather than fixating on costs, particularly in the current challenging landscape? Benny.
Wow, that's a very loaded question, right? Supply chain is a big challenge right now, right? So I think what happened over the last 12 to 18 months has demonstrated that the world is so connected, right? So what happened at the Suez Canal for so many days kind of like literally stuffed the world of critical components, right? And as a result of that, we are seeing clients, my clients actually stockpiling on chips, for example, right? If you can lay hands on microchip, you will do that. In fact, you'll just keep loading up, right? So this is what's happening right now. The phenomenon of critical parts, right? Parts that's critical to your supply chain, people are actually loading up. And as a consequence of that, you end up having a working capital challenge and financing challenge resulting from that, right? So it is something to definitely look into, right? And I'm not sure about technologies around that. I think there are some clients of mine have successfully tested a blockchain ecosystem, right? So they end up doing supplier financing, and they got a friendly bank involved, and they actually build a blockchain ecosystem around that. So there's a greater transparency in terms of movements of goods, and also there's no need to authenticate, right? In terms of I don't have to validate LCs or anymore, right? Because it's a closed-end ecosystem and enabled by blockchain technology. So that sort of thing does exist. There are a lot of case studies out there. So if you're interested, I think there's something to explore. So certainly the technology is there to create speed and transparency for supply chain. Mm-hmm. But the fundamental problem right now is a more basic one, right? It's stockpiling, working capital. Right? How do you balance that? Yeah.
Thanks very much, Benny. I'm going to ask another question now, this time to Xuelin. This question is scenario planning, everything on demand, customization, or ESG. Which of these would you view as a priority for the Treasury function? So just to repeat again, because it's which of these would you view as a priority for the Treasury function? That's scenario planning, everything on demand, customization, or ESG?
For me, it's priority for Treasury will be scenario planning, I think, because right now, we started topic with how do we think of the business outlook and how confident we are in the compared to before. I think, of course, right now, Treasury, since we have very limited resource, and I constantly trying to figure out, okay, those essential things that managed by Treasury, our financing, we talk, Benny mentioned the capital, my process, right? Like the resource that my business growth will need, whether we are able to support in different scenarios, and what are the worst scenario could happen to us. What if there's another like total lockdown in China, like what happened last year? We had like millions of compensation cancellation order to the customer, which was disastrous, and we had never had any. I think we never had this type of scenario testing before. So those ones, of course, will be the worst case scenario, and what would be the good one. I mean, I'm still looking forward to be able to take my company to start to issue the very first public bond, but that would require a very positive outlook for the travel industry and everything, or the supply chain, or the players around. So definitely scenario planning is my top priority. I'm not saying the other topics are not interesting or not important, but in terms of priority, definitely, I think prepare the Treasury for different scenarios in the coming year is very important.
Absolutely. In a world of uncertainty, you need to look at scenarios. Absolutely. Yeah. Great. So thanks, Xuelin. Now, Francis, I've got one for you here. I hope you'd like to answer this one. To what extent has the complexity of regulation and other compliance factors been shown up as a source of lost income and lower agility, in particular for those lacking the necessary visibility?
Oh, this is a difficult question to ask. I think that we respect the development of the finance and treasury sector, especially after global financial crisis. There has been a review of the practices and the ways of governance in the sector, not only for financial intermediaries, but also for corporates, and especially those larger corporates where they have more professional kind of transactions, such as derivatives, like the financial institutions. So we respect that, and that would require several perhaps ways to meet the challenges and with the standard. First is perhaps the agility to work out the business target and the treasury objectives in a better way. Greater transparency, greater governance, more established system procedures to go through the objectives, and perhaps sometimes more resources. Like at CLP, we have established a team of what we call it treasury control and compliance. So that consists of a few colleagues which have both treasury and internal control background, and then we generally develop them into professionals that can help review the transactions, work with the team, and come up with the protocol to give us the right level of comfort.
Thanks very much, Francis. And it was a difficult question. You answered it brilliantly, so thanks for that. Now, just a question to my panelists. We've been given permission, because we've got so many questions, to go over by 5 minutes. So that would be another 6 minutes. Are you all happy, panelists, to stay on for that further 6 minutes?
Yeah, go for that.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Right. Now, there's two quite related questions here, or they're on the same topic. So I'm going to read them both out and then see who would like to. I'll give you some freedom this time to see who would like to answer them. So one question says, A poll of 700 treasurers and CFOs around the world, conducted in 2018, revealed a lack of trust in fintech companies among corporate treasurers. How has both the landscape and mindsets shifted since then, if at all? That's one question about this lack of trust in fintech, but have we changed? The other related question says, treasurers can't afford to be on the back foot when confronting new risks and customer requirements, with technology showing that the tools are there to provide greater efficiency, better security. So Benny's mentioned blockchain already, distributed ledger technology, etc., and a lower cost. How can corporates take full advantage? So it's a kind of double question. Has the landscape changed? Do we view fintechs differently? Do we view technology differently? And if so, how can we take advantage? Would anyone like to start the ball rolling on those questions?
Yeah, I can probably answer part of the first question, the fintech one. Because at Trip, we incubate one fintech only unit as well. So this unit, we issue our own virtual credit card, and we do payment of foreign exchange service in Hong Kong. And soon we have another VCC license in Singapore. And also this fintech unit, we invested in a virtual bank in Hong Kong, which called the Mox Bank. So Francis might have heard of it. So for us, our attitude to fintech, as a business, we are very open. Like whenever there is like traditional banks are too costly or inefficient to do certain work, mostly in countries with foreign exchange restrictions, or too expensive to do cross-border payments, or too expensive to collect, we work with the fintech companies, and we have no problem with that. The only problem, the trust issue that I could imagine, like I could echo as well, is how compliant they are, right? So they are not regulated as big banks. So we do hear from time to time that stories like certain fintech companies be used by anti-money laundering or have other compliance issue. I think for us, it's like when we choose a fintech partner, we do due diligence, and we try to work with those bigger names or those backed by bigger ones, right? Like backed by Tencent, Grab, like those bigger companies. So we're hoping that, of course, that they have a bit more compliance. They're more trustworthy than some smaller players. But it's true that fintech companies, there are so many out there, and each country had their own version, offer similar service, but in different geographic region. It's difficult. I think for us, we are one of the ones that are quite open to work with fintechs. And so far we have no issue, and we really benefit from the upside. That means like cheaper, quicker solution, and also most of the time it's very light to implement in our current process.
Thanks very much, Xuelin. Anything to add, Benny? I can see you.
I can chime in on that one, right? So Trip.com in itself is a technology company. And as I work with clients who are technology company, the openness to collaborate with other companies is actually stronger, right? Mm-hmm. So the ability to build an ecosystem around, a shared outcome that you're trying to achieve. So the ability to adapt, to trust is actually much more stronger, say compared to say a more traditional corporate, right? So if the question comes from a corporate treasurer from a non-tech company, then my question is a little bit more philosophical, right? I mean, if one say I do not trust fintech, then my question is, what do you trust fintech's company to do? What I suppose it has to start with outcome. What's your expectation, right? Fintech in itself is a buzzword, digital is a buzzword, but if you distill to it, there are different outcomes that there are different companies providing different potential outcomes. So who you choose to work with, it depends on what your expectation is. And then like what Xuelin said, I think qualifying is important, right? Making sure that you are working with bona fide, technology. So who are not money launderers, for example, right? So these are the due diligence that has to take place before you onboard a tech partner, right? So I'll answer in two ways, right? Trust is a matter of what you expect them to do, right? And due diligence is definitely on you to be diligent about, right? So
Thanks very much, Benny. Now, just because we've got a couple of questions that also relate to digitalization, I'll just mention them briefly, and maybe Francis will get a chance to come in then with, and anyone else with any final points. So one of the questions is around treasurers. Are they looking at digital first multi-bank financing platforms as a means of accessing a wide range of lenders and optimize working capital more effectively? You know, how would the panel assess the quality of the provisions in place in this regard? So this is about, you know, digital first multi-bank financing platforms. Are there good provisions in place for that? The other question says, although clearly no panacea, to what extent has digitalization proved its mettle when it comes to business resilience and mitigating disruption, whether liaising with banks and insurers or managing inventory priorities? Is such visibility particularly useful when it comes to due diligence of suppliers and other entities? So on the one hand, you know, is that digitalization, is that helpful for visibility? Is it good for managing inventory priorities, etc., and liaising with banks and insurers? But then on the other side, are these platforms, financing platforms, helpful too as an extension of that? So quite a lot in those two questions, but I just wanted to squeeze in a couple of maybe 30 seconds, you know, responses from each of you, but maybe starting with Francis, any comments on those areas?
Well, digitalization is important. I think the root is the further integrations real time and the aim to analyze and capture the big picture and transform into a more recognizable way to support decision. That could be a very helpful tool together with good quality corporate policies and governance that would make perhaps companies to behave in a more eminent way that stand out from the average or from the mass.
Thanks, Francis. Any quick comment from you, Benny?
No big comment per se, though. I mean, these are clearly important topic, right? At the end of the day, whatever platform we embrace, cost of funds is important, right? Financing, how expensive or how cheap, and the reliability of funding, right? So you want to make sure that your funding stays continued, right? When you roll over, that the platform is there to actually give you financing. So I think these are two important criteria. Technology or not, right?
Indeed. Thank you, Benny. Xuelin, any final comment on those topics?
Yeah, the multi-bank, I didn't even know that there's a multi-bank financing platform as a contingent. I didn't even know that. I'm probably like going behind. Yeah, but for me, I think banking relationship is something that we treasure a lot, especially coming from just like we're still in the crisis, and we do appreciate, like we're traditionally, even the company is not the type that we shop around for the cheapest whatever, like cheapest payment or cheapest like a financing. We do treasure a long-term relationship, the long-term trust, and also the all the service around. So I think that to have everything like platformized, probably remove that part. So yeah, I'm more on the traditional side. Yeah, it can be a good backup, but yeah.
Thanks very much, Xuelin, and thanks for that honesty. I'm sorry we've overrun slightly, but there were so many good questions there. I'm sorry we didn't get through to every detail of those questions, but a big thank you to GTL for hosting us to have this corporate treasury session specifically focused on the world of corporate treasurers. It's been great to have my panelists here, Xuelin, Francis, Benny, taking their time to give some great responses to my questions and those of the audience. So thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon and evening, and see you all again soon. Take care, everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you, Caroline. Thanks, everyone. Bye.